The sleek glass doors of Nexus Dynamics Industries slid open with a whisper, revealing the sterile magnificence of humanity's most advanced technology corporation. Chrome surfaces gleamed under artificial light that mimicked Earth's sun, while holographic displays showcased the company's latest breakthroughs in quantum processing and neural interface technology. Kivishtal, CEO of the galactic conglomerate that had absorbed dozens of human enterprises, adjusted his four-eyed gaze across the waiting room. His chitinous exoskeleton, a deep purple-black that marked him as Nexari nobility, caught the light as he prepared to interview another hopeful human for their research division. These creatures fascinated him with their unpredictable creativity, though their emotional volatility often proved challenging. What he didn't expect was the soft patter of small feet echoing through the reception area, a human child no more than 8 Earth years by his estimation walked through the doors with the determined stride of someone 3 times her age. Her auburn hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, and she clutched a battered datapad against her chest like a shield. Dark circles shadowed her bright green eyes. Speaking of sleepless nights and burdens too heavy for such small shoulders, the Nexari receptionist, Quaindera, nearly dropped her stylus as the child approached the desk. Her translator implant struggled with the concept of a juvenile human in a corporate environment. "Excuse me," the girl said, her voice clear despite its tremor. "I'm here for the quantum dynamics position. My name is Liraleth Voss." Quaindera's compound eyes widened. "Child, there must be some mistake." "There's no mistake." Liraleth placed her datapad on the reception desk with careful precision. "I sent my application 3 cycles ago. My appointment is scheduled for 1400 standard." From his observation window, Kivishtal felt his mandibles click involuntarily, a sign of deep confusion among his species. He'd reviewed every application personally, as was his custom. The name Liraleth Voss had indeed crossed his desk, accompanied by theoretical work that had made even their senior scientists pause in admiration. But he'd assumed it was some kind of elaborate pseudonym or research collective. The receptionist looked toward his office, her expression pleading for guidance through the building's internal communication system. Kivishtal heard her whispered confusion. "Sir, there's a human larva here claiming to be Dr. Liraleth Voss." Kivishtal's 4 hearts began beating at different rhythms, another sign of extreme agitation. The equations that had accompanied that application had contained insights into quantum field manipulation that surpassed their own research by decades. The mathematics were so elegant, so impossibly advanced, that he'd wondered if humanity had been hiding their true technological capabilities. Now, staring at this child who barely reached the reception desk, he felt the universe tilt slightly off its axis. "Send her in," he commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked serious intent in his species. As Liraleth walked toward his office, Kivishtal noticed details that his initial shock had missed. Her clothes, while clean, showed signs of careful mending. Her shoes were worn but polished. Most telling of all, her datapad bore the scuff marks of heavy use, not the pristine device of someone playing pretend, but the tool of someone who relied on it daily. She entered his office without hesitation, though he caught the slight widening of her eyes as she took in his imposing form. To her credit, she didn't flinch or step backward. "Mr. Kivishtal," she said, pronouncing his name with surprising accuracy. "Thank you for seeing me. Please, sit." He gestured to the chair designed for human proportions. As she settled herself, datapad balanced on her knees, he decided on directness. "Liraleth Voss, I must ask, are you truly the author of the quantum field equations in your application?" Her chin lifted with unmistakable pride. "Yes, sir. Every calculation." "And your age?" 8 years, 4 months, and 16 days Earth Standard. The silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of advanced technology and the weight of impossible implications. Finally, Kivistol activated his most advanced lie detection protocols, designed to read micro-expressions and physiological responses across dozens of species. "Tell me about your qualifications." Lirelith's hands tightened on her datapad. "I've been working on quantum field theory since I was 5. I started with basic particle physics and built up from there. I understand it might seem unusual. Unusual is insufficient terminology," Kivistol interrupted. "What you've submitted represents theoretical work that our senior teams have been attempting for standard decades. You claim to have achieved this as a child." For the first time, her composure cracked slightly. "I need this job, sir. My mom." Her voice caught, and she swallowed hard before continuing. "My mom is in the hospital. She's been there for 6 months now, and the medical bills. ... Double quotes. She straightened her shoulders. "I can do the work. I know I can. I just need someone to give me the chance." Kivistol felt his exoskeleton shiver, an involuntary response his species experienced when confronted with something that challenged their understanding of reality itself. This wasn't just a prodigy seeking employment. This was a child, desperately, trying to save her parents' life through the application of genius-level intellect. The implications were staggering. If her work was genuine, his detection protocols suggested it was, then humanity possessed capabilities far beyond what the galactic community had suspected. More immediately, this small human represented a potential breakthrough that could revolutionize their understanding of physics itself. But beneath the scientific excitement, something else stirred in Kivistol's complex emotional matrix, something his species rarely experienced but recognized as protectiveness toward the young of other species. "Lirelith," he said carefully, "before we continue, I need you to understand something. The position you're applying for typically requires advanced degrees and decades of experience. The work is dangerous, both intellectually and physically. Are you certain you're prepared for such responsibility?" Her green eyes met his 4 amber ones without flinching. "Sir, with respect, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't certain. My mom taught me that when people are counting on you, you don't have the luxury of being unprepared." In that moment, Kivistol realized he wasn't just conducting an interview. He was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, emergence of human potential in its purest, most desperate form. Kivistol leaned back in his bioengineered chair, its living fibers adjusting to accommodate his shifting weight. The detection protocols hummed in his neural implants, confirming what his instincts had begun to suspect. The child spoke truth, however impossible it seemed. "Very well, Lirelith Voss," he said, his voice carrying undertones of decision. "You claim authorship of work that challenges our fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics. I propose a test." He gestured toward the holographic display that materialized between them, showing a complex 3-dimensional mathematical structure that seemed to pulse with its own inner logic. "This represents our current project and attempt to create stable quantum tunnels for instantaneous matter transmission across galactic distances. Our best minds have been working on it for 7 standard years." Lirelith studied the display, her young face growing increasingly focused. Kivistol watched as her eyes tracked the mathematical relationships, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding to something that looked almost like disappointment. "The harmonic resonance is wrong," she said quietly. "You're trying to force the quantum field into a stable configuration, but that's like trying to build a house on water. The field doesn't want to be stable, it wants to fluctuate. You have to work with the fluctuation, not against it." She reached toward the hologram, her fingers tracing paths through the light. "May I?" Kivistol nodded, fascination overriding protocol. The child began manipulating the display with surprising dexterity, her small hands weaving through complex mathematical structures as if they were physical objects. Where she touched, the equations shifted, evolved, transformed. The problem is here, she continued, highlighting a section of the calculation. You're assuming quantum coherence requires stability, but what if it requires controlled instability instead? What if the tunnel maintains itself not through rigidity, but through synchronized chaos? As she worked, Kivishto felt his mandibles clicking rapidly, his species equivalent of stunned amazement. The equations flowing from her modifications weren't just elegant, they were revolutionary. She was rewriting fundamental assumptions about quantum mechanics in real time, as casually as a human child might rearrange building blocks. Where did you learn this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lilith paused in her work, her expression growing distant. My mom is a physicist. Before she got sick. Her voice carried a weight that seemed impossible for someone so young. She used to bring work home, and I'd sit with her while she calculated. She said, I had a gift for seeing patterns others missed. What kind of physicist? Quantum field specialist for the Terra Defense Initiative. She was working on. Lilith stopped abruptly, her eyes widening as if she'd said too much. Kivishtal asked. 4 hearts synchronized their beating, a rare occurrence that indicated extreme focus. The Terra Defense Initiative was humanity's most classified military research division. Few outside Earth's government even knew of its existence, and fewer still understood its purpose. Your mother, he said carefully. What is her name? Dr. Kalen Voss. The pride in Lilith's voice was unmistakable, even as her hands trembled slightly. She's brilliant. The best quantum theorist Earth ever produced. But 6 months ago, she was exposed to exotic radiation during an experiment. The doctors say, her voice broke. They say she's dying, and the only treatment that might save her costs more credits than most people see in a lifetime. The pieces clicked into place with crystalline clarity. Kivishtal had heard whispers of Dr. Kalen Voss, rumors of a human scientist whose work had begun to challenge the technological supremacy of older galactic civilizations. Intelligence reports suggested she'd been on the verge of breakthrough, discoveries that could shift the balance of power among the stars. Now her daughter sat in his office, displaying the same revolutionary insights with the desperate urgency of someone fighting time itself. The modifications you've made to our equations, Kivishtal said, studying the transformed hologram, they're not entirely your own work, are they? Lilith's chin lifted defiantly. The foundational theory came from my mom's research, but the applications, the mathematical proofs, the quantum harmonics, all of that is mine. I've been building on her work since she got sick, she swallowed hard, trying to finish what she started. And why bring it to us? Why not to human authorities? For the first time, anger flashed in her green eyes. Because human authorities move slow, committees and reviews, and bureaucratic protocols that can take years. My mom doesn't have years. She might not have months. Her hands clenched into small fists. But I've researched nexus dynamics. You make decisions fast. You take risks, and you pay well for revolutionary discoveries. Kivishtal studied the child, this impossible fusion of genius and desperation, and felt something shift in his understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. Here was a species that could produce such brilliance under such duress, that could transform crisis into breakthrough innovation. The modified equations hovering between them represented more than scientific advancement. They were a testament to human determination, to a daughter's love for her mother, to the terrifying potential that lay dormant within Earth's population. Lilith, he said finally, what you've shown me today could change the course of galactic civilization. But before we proceed, I need to understand something. Are you prepared for the consequences of such change? She met his gaze without flinching. Mr. Kivishtal, I'm 8 years old. My mom is dying. And I'm sitting in the office of an alien CEO, trying to sell revolutionary physics to save her life. I crossed the line of normal consequences a long time ago. The honesty in her voice, the stark assessment of her impossible situation, struck Kivishtal with the force of revelation. This wasn't just a prodigy seeking recognition, or a child playing at adult responsibilities. This was someone who had already accepted the weight of extraordinary circumstances, and chosen to bear them with dignity. He made his decision. "Very well," he said, his harmonics conveying formal commitment. "Nexus Dynamics will offer you a position as senior theoretical consultant, with a signing bonus sufficient to cover your mother's medical expenses. But I have conditions." Hope blazed in her eyes, quickly tempered by wariness. "What conditions?" "First, you will work under my direct supervision. No department head will give you orders without my approval. Second, your identity and age remain classified for your protection as much as our corporate security. Third," he paused, studying her carefully, "you will accept assigned tutors in areas beyond mathematics and physics. A mind like yours requires comprehensive development." Tears began sliding down her cheeks, the first display of truly childlike emotions since she'd entered his office. "You mean it? You'll really hire me?" "Liralith Voss," Kivishtal said formally, "welcome to Nexus Dynamics. Your first assignment will be to complete the quantum tunnel project you just revolutionized. I estimate it will be worth approximately 50 million galactic credits upon successful implementation." The sound she made wasn't quite a laugh, and wasn't quite a sob, but it carried more relief than his sensitive hearing had ever registered from any species. "When do I start?" she asked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Tomorrow," he replied. "But first, I believe you have a mother to visit." 3 weeks into her employment at Nexus Dynamics, Liralith had already shattered to productivity records and caused a minor crisis in the theoretical physics department. Her age remained classified, but rumors spread through the corporation, like quantum particles through a probability field impossible to pin down, but undeniably present. Dr. Rexener, the previous head of quantum research, had submitted his resignation after Liralith casually corrected errors in calculations he'd been working on for 6 months. His replacement, Dr. Teshaman, from the Vorthan Collective, proved more adaptable to working with someone whose insights routinely defied conventional understanding. "The quantum tunnel prototype is ready for testing," Teshamin reported to Kivishtal during their morning briefing. Her blue-scaled features showed a mixture of excitement and bewilderment that had become common among staff working with their youngest consultant. "Liralith's modifications have exceeded all theoretical projections." Kivishtal nodded, though his attention was partially focused on the small figure hunched over a workstation in the adjacent laboratory. Through the transparent aluminum barrier, he could see Liralith surrounded by holographic equations that would have challenged the combined faculty of most universities. Her fingers moved through the light with practiced precision, adjusting variables with an intuitive understanding that continued to astound observers. "Her integration with the team?" he inquired. "Complicated," Teshamin admitted. "The senior researchers respect her work, but struggle with her age. Some have begun treating her as a mascot rather than a colleague. Others seem intimidated by her capabilities, and there's concern about the psychological pressure she's under." That concern was well evident. Despite her professional success, the strain showed in subtle ways. Liralith worked longer hours than many adults, often staying late into the night cycles. She ate irregularly, slept fitfully in the small quarters they'd provided, and maintained an almost manic focus on advancing their projects as quickly as possible. The medical reports on her mother provided the driving context for her urgency. Dr. Kaylin Voss remained in critical condition, her body slowly succumbing to exotic radiation poisoning, while the most advanced treatments held the damage at bay. The window for successful intervention was closing with each passing day. "She needs to see her mother," Kivishtal decided. "Arrange transport to Earth immediately." "Sir, the security protocols will be modified as necessary." His harmonics carried absolute authority. Liralith's productivity is directly linked to her emotional state. If we want her best work, we must address the source of her distress. An hour later, Kivishtal found himself aboard a high-speed transport vessel, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen, while Lireleth sat rigidly in the passenger seat beside him. She'd said little since he'd announced the journey, but her hands trembled slightly, whether from anticipation or fear, he couldn't determine. "Tell me about your mother," he said, hoping conversation might ease her obvious tension. "She's the smartest person I've ever known," Lireleth replied immediately. "When I was little, she used to explain quantum mechanics, using soap bubbles and light prisms. She said the universe was like a giant puzzle, and every equation was just another piece finding its place. And she taught you physics." "Not exactly," taught Lireleth, considered her words carefully. "More like, shared her thinking process. She'd work through problems out loud, and I'd ask questions. Eventually, I started seeing patterns she hadn't noticed yet. She said I had an intuitive grasp of mathematical relationships that couldn't be taught. It was just how my brain worked." The transport began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, and Kivishtal watched Lireleth's reflection in the viewport. Beneath her mature demeanor and revolutionary intelligence, she was still very much a child missing her mother. Terra Medical Center was humanity's most advanced healthcare facility, a gleaming complex that rivaled anything the galactic community had produced. As they navigated through corridors filled with cutting-edge medical technology, Kivishtal noted the deference shown to Lireleth by the staff. Word of her employment with Nexus Dynamics had clearly reached Earth's medical community, along with the understanding that her work was funding the experimental treatments keeping her mother alive. Dr. Kaylin Voss lay in a specially designed isolation chamber, surrounded by machines that monitored her cellular regeneration, while exotic energy fields worked to counteract the radiation damage. Even through the medical equipment, Kivishtal could see where Lireleth had inherited her sharp intelligence, the same bright eyes, the same determined jawline, though now softened by illness and medical intervention. "Mom," Lireleth whispered, her small hand pressing against the chamber's transparent surface. Dr. Voss's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her daughter with obvious effort. When she spoke, her voice was weak, but unmistakably proud. "My brilliant girl, I heard about your new job. I'm saving you," Lireleth said simply. "The treatments are working, and I'm earning enough to cover everything. You just have to keep fighting. I'm so proud of you, Lyra, but promise me something: don't lose yourself in the equations. Remember that you're still a child, no matter how exceptional your mind is." Through his emotional resonance sensors, Kivishtal felt the complex interplay of love, fear, determination, and desperate hope flowing between mother and daughter. It was then that he fully understood what drove Lireleth's unprecedented achievements, not merely intellectual curiosity, but a daughter's fierce love translated into mathematical innovation. The conversation continued for another hour, touching on technical theories and childhood memories with equal weight. Dr. Voss's condition had stabilized, the medical staff reported, but full recovery would require treatments that pushed the boundaries of current medical science. On the return journey to Nexus Dynamics, Lireleth was quieter than usual, staring out at the stars with an expression of renewed determination. "She's proud of you," Kivishtal observed. "She's dying because she pushed too hard, too fast in her research," Lireleth replied. "The experiment that exposed her to exotic radiation, she was trying to prove a theoretical framework that could have changed everything. Now, she's paying the price for scientific ambition. And yet you've chosen to follow the same path." Lireleth turned to face him, her green eyes blazing with resolution. "The difference is, I'm not trying to change everything for abstract knowledge. I'm trying to change everything to save the person I love most in the universe. That's not ambition, that's necessity." In that moment, Kivishtal realized he was witnessing the emergence of something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just human genius unleashed by desperate circumstances, but a new form of innovation driven by emotional connection, rather than scientific curiosity alone. The implications were staggering. If humanity could routinely produce such brilliance under pressure, if their emotional bonds could be transformed into technological breakthroughs, then the galaxy's established power structures might be far more fragile than anyone had imagined, as their transport ship jumped back into hyperspace, carrying them toward the next phase of Lireleth's impossible journey. Kivishtol began making plans for discoveries that could reshape civilization itself. The quantum tunnel test commenced at 0800 Standard Time, observed by representatives from 6 major galactic civilizations and broadcast live to research institutions across known space. What they witnessed would be remembered as the moment human scientific capability announced itself to the galaxy with unignorable force. Lireleth stood before the massive quantum field generator, her small figure dwarfed by technology that reached toward the laboratory's vaulted ceiling. At her fingertips, holographic controls responded to gestures that seemed more like conducting an orchestra than operating machinery. The equations floating around her pulsed with inner light, each variable adjusted with the precision of someone who understood not just the mathematics, but the fundamental nature of quantum reality itself. Initiating field generation sequence, she announced, her voice carrying throughout the observation deck, where dozens of the galaxy's most brilliant minds watched in respectful silence. The generator hummed to life, and space itself began to bend. Through carefully controlled manipulation of quantum fluctuations, a tunnel formed in the laboratory's Matora corridor through folded spacetime that connected 2 points separated by 3,000 kilometers. On the far end, monitoring stations confirmed the tunnel's stability and dimensional accuracy. Field coherence at 97%, Lireleth reported, transmission ready for matter testing. A simple iron sphere, embedded with quantum trackers, vanished into the tunnel's entrance and materialized instantly at its exit. Then, a more complex device. Then a live sample of Terran bacteria, which emerged not only intact, but showing enhanced cellular activity from exposure to exotic quantum fields. The assembled observers began murmuring in languages spanning dozens of worlds, but their collective amazement was unmistakable. What Lireleth had achieved in weeks would have taken established research teams decades to accomplish if they could have accomplished it at all. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Zalith from the Andromedan Science Collective, his crystalline features reflecting the tunnel's otherworldly glow. "The energy requirements alone should exceed the output of a small star." "Not impossible," Lireleth corrected, though she didn't look away from her instruments. "Just different. Everyone assumes quantum tunneling requires brute force manipulation of space-time. But what if you work with quantum field harmonics instead? Let the universe do most of the work while you provide gentle guidance." Through the observation window, Kivishto watched his young consultant demonstrate capabilities that would soon make her the most valuable individual in known space. But he also noticed details others missed: the slight tremor in her hands, the dark circles under her eyes that had deepened since their visit to Earth, the way she seemed to be pushing herself beyond healthy limits. The test concluded with complete success. The quantum tunnel remained stable for 47 minutes before Lireleth carefully collapsed the field, and every measurement exceeded theoretical projections. As the assembled dignitaries erupted in discussion and debate, she simply turned to Kivishto with exhausted satisfaction. "The commercial applications will be worth approximately 200 million galactic credits annually," she said matter-of-factly. "More than enough to fund my mother's treatment and expand our research division." But Kivistol's attention was caught by something else: a barely perceptible waver in her voice. A momentary loss of focus that suggested her remarkable composure might be reaching its limits that evening. He found her in the small quarters she'd claimed as her own, hunched over a personal data terminal with tears streaming down her face. On the screen, medical reports from Terra Medical Center painted a stark picture. Despite the advanced treatments her earnings had funded, Dr. Kalen Voss's condition had taken a sudden turn for the worse. The radiation damage is accelerating, Lireleth said, without looking up. The treatments are losing effectiveness. The doctors estimate she has perhaps 6 weeks before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Kivishtal felt his protective instincts rarely, triggered by members of other species, surge to unexpected strength. What do the medical experts recommend? Experimental cellular regeneration therapy using exotic matter manipulation. But it's theoretical, dangerous, and would require. She looked up at him with eyes that held depths of knowledge and desperation no 8-year-old should possess. It would require quantum field manipulation beyond anything currently possible. The implication hung in the air between them. The same breakthrough that had made today's test possible might hold the key to saving her mother's life. But scaling it to biological applications would push even Lireleth's abilities to their absolute limits. You're thinking of attempting it yourself, Kivishtal observed. I'm the only one who understands the field dynamics well enough to make it work. The quantum tunnel was just the beginning. Biological applications require manipulation at the subatomic level, with precision, that ... double quotes. She paused, wiping her eyes. With precision that will probably kill me if I make even small mistakes. And if you don't attempt it, then I lose my mother, and the greatest scientific mind Earth has ever produced dies, because her daughter wasn't brilliant enough to save her. Kivishtal studied the child, this impossible fusion of genius and desperation, who had already revolutionized their understanding of physics. In her face, he saw the weight of knowledge that most species didn't acquire until they'd lived for centuries. But he also saw something else, the unshakable determination that had driven humanity to spread across the stars. Despite their relative youth, as a spacefaring civilization, there's another option, he said carefully. Nexus Dynamics commands resources from across the galaxy. We could assemble a team of the finest medical minds, the most advanced equipment. No, Lireleth interrupted, her voice carrying absolute certainty. This isn't about resources or expertise. It's about understanding quantum field interaction at a level that can't be taught or shared. Either I can save her, or she dies. There's no middle ground. The stark assessment chilled Kivishtal to his chitinous core. Here was a child who had already calculated the mathematics of her own mortality, and found them acceptable if they offered even a chance to preserve the person she loved most. When he asked simply, as soon as possible. Every day increases the risk that the radiation damage will pass the point of reversibility. She looked at him with eyes that held the weight of impossible decisions. I'll need access to the most advanced quantum manipulation equipment in our inventory, and a medical facility capable of supporting biological experimentation. And if the attempt fails? For the first time since he'd known her, Lireleth smiled, a expression that carried more sadness than joy. Then at least I'll have tried everything. My mom taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is attempt something impossible, because the alternative is accepting defeat. As Kiv left her quarters that night, he realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just the emergence of human scientific capability, but the transformation of a child's love into a force that might literally reshape the boundaries of what was possible. The next phase of Lireleth's journey would either save her mother's life or claim her own. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The medical laboratory Kivishtal had commissioned for Lireleth's experiment represented the pinnacle of galactic biotechnology. Equipment worth more than most planets' annual budgets arranged around a single treatment chair that would either save Dr. Kalen Voss's life or witness the final sacrifice of her daughter's genius. Lireleth moved through the preparation with methodical precision, her small hands adjusting quantum field generators that towered above her while senior medical technicians from a dozen species watched in respectful silence. She'd spent the past 72 hours in continuous calculation, developing mathematical models that pushed the boundaries of known physics into territory no one had ever explored. The cellular regeneration protocol requires quantum field manipulation at the atomic level, she explained to the assembled team, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. We'll need to isolate each damaged cell, reverse the exotic radiation exposure, and regenerate healthy tissue without disrupting the surrounding biological matrix. Dr. Helsinth, Chief Medical Officer for the Centauran Medical Collective, studied the holographic projections with obvious amazement. This level of precision has never been attempted. The energy requirements alone could destabilize the quantum fields supporting this entire facility. Only if you assume traditional manipulation techniques, Lireleth replied, not looking up from her final calculations. But quantum fields respond to harmonic resonance. Instead of forcing changes, we guide them through synchronized field fluctuations that work with natural biological processes. Through the observation deck, Kivishtal watched preparations proceed with the efficiency of military precision. But he also saw what others missed: a slight tremor in Lireleth's movements. The way she paused occasionally as if fighting off waves of exhaustion. The manner in which she kept glancing toward the treatment chair where her mother would soon lie. Dr. Kaylin Voss had been transported from Earth under maximum security. Her condition stabilized just enough to survive the journey. As medical technicians prepared her for the experimental procedure, she remained conscious, a deliberate choice that would allow her to provide real-time feedback during the quantum cellular manipulation. "Are you certain about this, Lyra?" she asked as her daughter performed final equipment checks. Even weakened by months of radiation exposure, her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent her career pushing the boundaries of scientific possibility. "The mathematics are sound," Lireleth replied, though she couldn't quite keep the fear from her voice. "I've run the calculations thousands of times. The probability of success is approximately 67%, and the probability of survival, if we do nothing, 0% within 2 weeks. Dr. Voss nodded slowly. "Then we proceed." As the medical team stepped back to safe observation distances, Lireleth took her position at the quantum manipulation console. The equipment around her hummed to life, generating fields that made the air itself shimmer with exotic energy on dozens of monitoring screens. Her mother's cellular structure appeared in perfect detail, healthy tissue struggling against radiation damage that spread like a slow poison through her entire body. "Initiating quantum field mapping," Lireleth announced, her hands beginning the complex dance of gestures that would either save or damn them both. The first phase proceeded flawlessly. Quantum scanners identified each damaged cell with precision that exceeded the resolution of most species' medical technology. Lireleth's field manipulations began isolating the radiation-affected areas, containing the damage while preparing healthy tissue for the regeneration process. "Cellular isolation at 93%, she reported, beginning quantum field reversal sequence. This was the truly dangerous part, using controlled quantum fluctuations to reverse the exotic radiation's effects at the subatomic level. One miscalculation could transform healing energy into destructive force that would kill her mother instantly." Lireleth's movements became increasingly fluid, as if she were conducting an orchestra of pure mathematics. Around her, the quantum fields pulsed in harmony with her gestures, each adjustment guided by understanding that transcended conventional scientific training. "Field resonance achieving therapeutic frequency," Dr. Helsinth observed, his voice filled with wonder. "I'm seeing cellular regeneration at rates that exceed our most optimistic projections." On the monitoring screens, the change was visible in real time. Damaged tissue began repairing itself as quantum manipulation guided cellular reconstruction with impossible precision. Radiation-poisoned cells transformed back into healthy structures, while new tissue grew to replace areas too severely damaged for recovery. But the process came at a cost. Lireleth's face grew increasingly pale as she maintained the complex field manipulations, her small body channeling energies that would have challenged full-grown technicians with decades of experience. Blood began trickling from her nose, sign that the quantum resonance was affecting her own cellular structure. "Lyra, stop," her mother called weakly. "You're pushing too hard." "Almost finished," Lireleth replied through gritted teeth. "Just need to complete the regeneration sequence and stabilize the new cellular matrix." Her hands moved with desperate precision through the final phase of the procedure, guiding quantum fields through configurations that existed nowhere in established medical literature. Around her, equipment registered energy levels that threatened to overload safety systems, while the air itself crackled with barely controlled forces. "Cellular regeneration at 97% completion," she announced, her voice barely audible over the quantum generator's increasing resonance. Initiating stabilization protocol. The final moments of the procedure pushed Lireleth beyond the limits of human endurance. Her nose bled freely now, and her hands shook as she struggled to maintain the precise field manipulations required for biological stability. But her eyes remained focused on the monitoring screens, showing her mother's remarkable recovery. "Quantum field stabilization complete," she whispered, and collapsed. The medical team rushed to attend both patients, but the results were already clear. Dr. Kalen Voss's cellular scans showed complete recovery from radiation damage. Her body restored to health that exceeded even pre-exposure levels, but Lireleth lay unconscious, her small form barely breathing, as medical scanners revealed the toll her heroic effort had extracted. "Quantum field resonance syndrome," Dr. Helsinth diagnosed grimly. "Her cellular structure has been disrupted by prolonged exposure to exotic energy fields. We need to stabilize her immediately." As medical technicians worked to save the young genius who had just revolutionized biological medicine, Kivishtal found himself confronting the terrible irony of success. Lireleth had achieved the impossible. She had saved her mother's life through sheer force of intellect and will. But the cost might be her own existence. In the hours that followed, as mother and daughter lay in adjacent medical chambers, the galaxy began to realize what it had witnessed. Not just a breakthrough in quantum medicine, but a demonstration of human potential that challenged every assumption about what was possible when love transformed intelligence into action. The final chapter of their story would determine whether genius and sacrifice could coexist, or if the price of miracles was always paid in full. For 3 days, Lireleth existed in a quantum state between life and death, her cellular structure fluctuating in response to exotic energy exposure that no medical text had ever described. The greatest physicians in known space worked around the clock, applying treatments that blended cutting-edge medicine with theoretical physics as they fought to stabilize a condition that shouldn't have been survivable. Dr. Kalen Voss, fully recovered and stronger than she'd been in years, refused to leave her daughter's bedside. Her brilliant mind, the same intellect that had produced breakthrough discoveries in quantum field theory, now focused entirely on understanding the biological effects of prolonged quantum manipulation. "Her brain patterns are unlike anything we've recorded," Dr. Helsinth reported during the morning briefing. "The quantum field exposure has somehow enhanced her neural pathways, creating connections that shouldn't be possible in standard human neurology." Through the medical chamber's transparent walls, Kivishtal observed the child who had revolutionized their understanding of both physics and medicine. Monitoring equipment showed Lireleth's brain activity in real-time patterns of thought that pulsed with mathematical precision, as if her consciousness had become synchronized with the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. "She's dreaming in equations," her mother whispered, studying the neural readouts with professional fascination mixed with maternal concern. "Look at these patterns. She's solving problems even while unconscious. Her mind is processing quantum field mathematics faster than our most advanced computers." The implications were staggering. If Lireleth survived, she might emerge with capabilities that transcended normal human limitations. But survival remained uncertain. Her body continued fighting the exotic effects of quantum resonance exposure, and each day brought new medical challenges that pushed the boundaries of what healing science could accomplish. On the fourth day, something extraordinary happened. Lireleth's eyes opened, but they weren't quite the same shade of green they'd been before the procedure. Now they seemed to hold depths that reflected inner understanding of cosmic principles, as if she could perceive mathematical relationships that existed beyond normal sensory experience. "Mom," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "I'm here, sweetheart," Dr. Voss replied, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me, Lyra. You actually saved me." "I can see it," Lireleth said softly, her gaze focusing on something beyond the medical chamber's walls. "The quantum field interactions. They're everywhere in the air, in our bodies, in the space between atoms. It's beautiful." Dr. Helson activated his most sensitive neural scanners, recording brain patterns that would revolutionize their understanding of consciousness itself. "Her cognitive processing speed has increased by approximately 400%, he reported in amazement. "She's not just thinking faster, she's thinking in ways that weren't possible before the exposure." Over the following weeks, as Lireleth recovered her physical strength, the true extent of her transformation became clear. The quantum field exposure had fundamentally altered her neurology, creating a brain that could process mathematical relationships with superhuman speed and precision. She could visualize quantum interactions in real time, predict field fluctuations with perfect accuracy, and solve theoretical problems that had challenged civilizations for millennia. But perhaps more importantly, she remained fundamentally herself, a child whose love for her mother had driven her to attempt the impossible and somehow survive the consequences. "We need to discuss your future," Kivishtal said during one of their regular conversations. "Your capabilities now exceed those of most artificial intelligences. The galactic scientific community is clamoring for access to your insights." Lireleth, now able to maintain holographic equations in her mind without external projection, considered the question with the same careful precision she applied to physics problems. "I want to help people," she said simply. "Not governments or corporations or research institutions, people. Individuals who need impossible things to become possible. And your mother's condition. Completely stable," Dr. Voss interjected, joining them in Lireleth's recovery chamber. "Better than stable, actually. The quantum cellular regeneration has enhanced my immune system and cognitive function beyond baseline human norms. I'm healthier now than I was before the radiation exposure." What followed was a period of remarkable discovery. Mother and daughter, now both enhanced by their exposure to exotic quantum fields, began collaborating on projects that revolutionized multiple fields of study simultaneously. Medical applications of quantum field manipulation became standard practice across the galaxy. Transportation technology advanced by centuries in a matter of months. Energy generation systems achieved efficiency levels that had been considered theoretically impossible, but their greatest achievement was less tangible. The demonstration that human potential, when driven by love and necessity, could transcend established limitations of possibility itself. 6 months after the experimental procedure, Kivishtal received a message that would define the next phase of galactic civilization. The Terran Institute for Quantum Applications has been established. Dr. Kalen Voss announced during a broadcast 2 scientific institutions across known space. Its mission is to make quantum field technology accessible to anyone who needs it, regardless of their ability to pay or their species' political affiliations. Standing beside her mother, Lireleth, now bearing the informal title of youngest professor in galactic history, added her own statement. "We've learned that the most important discoveries aren't made in laboratories or boardrooms. They're made when someone loves another person enough to attempt impossible things. That's the kind of science we want to practice." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Researchers from hundreds of worlds requested collaboration. Governments offered vast sums for exclusive access to their discoveries. Corporate entities proposed partnerships that would have made them the wealthiest individuals in recorded history. They declined every offer that would have restricted their knowledge or limited access to their innovations. Instead, they established research centers on dozens of worlds, staffed by scientists who shared their vision of knowledge as a tool for universal benefit rather than competitive advantage. The quantum field manipulation techniques Lilith had developed became freely available through educational programs that transformed entire civilizations' technological capabilities. Years later, when historians attempted to identify the moment when humanity announced its arrival as a major galactic power, they would point to that day when an 8-year-old girl walked into a job interview and changed the course of cosmic civilization through the application of desperate love transformed into scientific breakthrough. Kivistol, now serving as director of the Terran Institute's Galactic Liaison Office, often reflected on the impossible chain of events that had begun with a child's determination to save her mother's life. In his species philosophy, there was a concept that translated roughly as the mathematics of necessity, the idea that when circumstances demanded impossible achievements, reality itself would sometimes bend to accommodate them. He had witnessed that bending firsthand, and it had taught him something profound about the human species. They were not just another civilization among many, but a force capable of rewriting the fundamental equations that governed what was possible. The little girl who had walked into his office, seeking employment, had become something unprecedented, a human being whose love had literally transcended the boundaries of scientific possibility and emerged with capabilities that would benefit countless worlds for generations to come. And in the end, that might be humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization. The understanding that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't energy or matter or even time itself, but the willingness to attempt impossible things for the sake of those we love. The mathematics of love, it turned out, could indeed reshape reality, and Lilith Voss, quantum physicist, medical revolutionary, and devoted daughter, had proven that beyond any doubt. End author's note. This story explores the HFY humanity, yeah, theme through the lens of human potential unleashed by desperate love and necessity. It demonstrates how emotional bonds can drive scientific achievement beyond conventional limitations, while showcasing humanity's characteristic determination to attempt impossible things when the stakes involve protecting those they care about most.